Oh, Jesus. It's fine. Everything's fine. 3 minutes late. It's fine. How long were you all waiting? Oh, shh. I didn't just lose my bookmark. What do you mean? No. What has happened? There we go. Okay, I found it. It's fine. I found my place. Is that a spooky season shirt? It's the portal to the cat dimension. So depending on your definition of spooky season shirtwear, it could be. I think I nudged the camera a little bit when I came on. It's one of my favorite shirts. Sorry I'm not in cosplay today, guys. I was attempting to get test footage for Johannes for the green screen. So I was running around town taking pictures of shit, and if I had to skulk about in public taking pictures of other people's property, I didn't want it to be in full cosplay, because that would have caused even more problems, I feel like. So I did not run around and take pictures of other people's property dressed as Shinzo. Anyway. Oh, Mina's here. I'm not even dressed as Shinzo. I'm low-key worried a bunch of people are going to come in here and be like, where's Shinzo? I thought this was... Yeah, exactly. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. I was very suspicious. Not me, like, lurking outside of the railway museum taking pictures of trains. They were like... There was one person in the gift shop that I saw look out the window and was just like... And I was like, they're gonna come out here any minute and be like, what are you doing? But I've learned that in most situations, if you act like you're supposed to belong there, then almost no one will say anything to you. So I just like looked back, smiled, and waved, and they just turned right back around and didn't do anything. So I was like, yes. I don't know what I would have told them I was doing if they came out there. I would have been like, I'm a influencer, or I'm promoting your museum. I don't know. I have no idea what I would have done, because I can't fake it and say I work for the website, because the people that work for the website work at the shop. Work there. So I was like, can't do that. I'm gonna have to lie my ass off. Absolutely being a lover of trains. Everyone knows. Oh, thank you for the likes. I appreciate it. Everyone knows I am a great lover of trains. You all know this. I talk to you at length about it almost every Tuesday. I regale you with my love of trains. And if you haven't heard it, then you absolutely must be new, because I can't imagine why you would not know. Did you not know this was the train live? What did I title this live? If it's not titled Trains, It's not. I never talk about trains. Everybody who's usually here is like, yes, trains. No. But you all know what I want the train for. You all know. So, trying to get footage of trains, not as easy as it would look. Because you don't want it to look like a cargo train. You want it to look like a passenger train. You all know. It's alright. You're not the only one who's probably a little confused right now, Mina. when we do this live every Tuesday, and you've been here a couple of times, but we've been through a number of books. And the first book in this series is called Brothers Cabal the Necromancer. We're now on book 4, but the first one, A Train, was featured very heavily, and I will be cosplaying Johannes soon. And I need footage of trains. Which is problematic if you can't really get footage of trains. But luckily, I have a railway museum where I live and have been trying to get train footage. But very surreptitiously. So just me skulking around a railway museum in front of a bunch of very old trains. Historically accurate trains. Which you should not be doing. You have to pay to go to this museum. I'm just trespassing. Which is not the best idea, but I had fun. I was running around all day trying to get footage, so we'll see how that goes. I still have to edit the photos and then do the overlay for the actual shoots. So a lot of editing, but, and then hopefully if we can ever get Nodi back into Horst, that'll be really fun. We can shoot some more stuff. I have some more stuff. I'd desperately like to shoot with Nodi, but they will be out of town soon. So it might have to wait until they get back. Hello. Setting a bad example for the kiddos. Absolutely, I am setting a terrible example for the kiddos. If you have children, don't let them watch my life. No. I'm not too bad of an influence. I don't litter. I don't leave my trash about the place. I might be trespassing on property and, running around. But at least I don't leave, beer cans and, nonsense. I was doing a shoot where I want to shoot Ghoul Johannes. And it is a trash pit, literally. There's trash everywhere. And I was like, don't like that there's litter everywhere. This would be a very great, I hesitate to say scenic view, because it's Ghoul Johannes, but it's a place that would look better without trash in it. But I was like, this is it. This is the place that I want to film it. And I cannot go there in person. I will almost definitely be hunted for sport if I show up looking like a ghoul in an open sewer pipe. I also don't want to get in the open sewer pipe. So that's the other part. That sounds... I almost want to, because legit, I was like, this is all just... So there was a bra, and then a couple of beer cans, and then what looked weirdly like a tarp, and I was like, I'm gonna try and get as little of the graffiti in here as possible. I was like, are local kids doing this? Is this still a thing? I know in the 90s we were trash, but are kids still bonkers? I don't even know anymore. Yes, Glen Lily, on the east end of Glen Lily, not the one that goes all the way up to the outskirts, but the one closer to, you know what I'm talking about. You take a right, you know what I mean. The first left you come to is a gravel road, with a very large open field. And if you go down, right under the bridge that you just passed, under there, don't go down there. You may not be able to get back up. I almost could not. It had rained recently, so the ground down was completely worn smooth. And it was just a mudslide all the way down. I did surfer slide down it, And then once I got down there, I was like, that's going to be a problem getting back up. And I was right. And it was. It was a problem. It was very much a problem. I got back up though. Yes. Around the back of the fairgrounds. And then there is like a weird, I don't even know what to call it. I'll show you pictures of it, and I'll tell you where it's at if you want to know what it is. But I'm unsure what it is. It's not technically like an open sewer pipe. It's not even really a bridge. It is so small. It looks like it is meant for ghouls. Like, there's only like maybe 2 feet worth of space. It's not even a bridge. I don't even know what it is. I'll just show you a picture of it later and you can try and figure it out. No. If you ever see me go live in the pit, oof, I don't think I would. You know what? That's a choice, and school sucks anyway. Can you wear a hat? Just put a hat over it. Put a hat where no hats, maybe? Probably not. It's school. Did they let you wear hats in school? I don't even remember what school is like, to be perfectly honest. I am so far outside of the realm of, like, structuralized public schools. I do not know what happens there anymore. I'm not completely... Ooh, okay. What does that mean? We're getting old, Toshi. Oh, we're getting old. Put the emphasis on the wrong word. Okay. For a second I was like, what? But yeah, no, I don't even know what school is anymore, almost. I forget school happens until, like, I'm going down the road and I see, like, 5 school buses, and I'm like, what is happening? Is this a tiny homes convention? And then I'm like, no, that's probably actually children exist and school happens. Why is my first thought is that everyone has been making school buses into tiny houses? Yeah, get a wig. Get, like, a naturally styled wig. Get, like, a blonde or a brunette or, like a black wig, and just... You can really fake it if you make it, like, a lace front, and then just... You're like, no, I just dyed it. You'd have to upkeep that for so long, though. And I know because I did that in college. I ran around in various wigs. The entire semester, I had a different wig for different days of the week depending on the roster of classes, and I just faked it like that was my actual hair, so that anytime I went out, I would only encounter people from that subset of classes that I took that day, and when I wanted to encounter no one, I would not wear a wig. Pro tip for if you hate everyone you take classes with. Like 3 people knew about that. Oh no. Yeah, I did that all through college. I had a blonde wig for like 3 days out of the week, and then I had a brunette wig for the remainder of the week, but they were both styled somewhat similarly. I also had like another semester, I had a pink wig and then a red wig. And I would just go to classes. That way I would also never encounter anybody I had met in the previous semester either. So if they knew me one semester, I went mysteriously missing the next semester. All right, so I think we've whittled it down to the main people now. Time to get down to what the actual purpose of this live is. We're reading a book, guys. If you're new and you don't know what we do here, this isn't actually live where we sit around and bullshit through the next couple of hours and we play music or whatever the hell normal people do on their lives, or we don't do that here. What we do to Lady Eva, immediately I start getting twos, like we're ready, we're good to go. No, we read a book. I read to you guys. We read a nice happy little story, and then you get to fall asleep to the sound of my voice, perhaps. Oh, thank you for the corgi. Twos racking up. And sometimes, if you do manage to get awake, then you have something to kind of mull over while you're trying to fall asleep later. And roundabout, it's just a great way to end the day. I think, we don't do bedtime stories anymore as adults, or even as young adults. Anytime past child age, you don't really get a bedtime story anymore. So I'm here to fulfill that need. So, if you're new here and you don't know what's going on, we've been reading a series. It's called Brothers Cabal, and this is the 4th installment in the series. So if you're here, you're late to the party, is what I'm saying. And you can always go to the YouTube and catch up on all the content you've missed. But who needs to do that, am I right? You like to live on the edge, obviously, if you're here. So you could just jump in and have no context whatsoever and no idea what's happening and still be very confused while also enjoying a very weird short story to you. If you'd like to catch up, or if you like the sound of my voice, or if you need something to fall asleep to that is just a little bit out of the ordinary, you can always go to my YouTube and watch the rest of the series if you want to get caught up and know what's going on. So, yeah, that means the sound is good, the quality is good, nobody's having internet issues, I'm not having internet issues, because sometimes I can't always tell. So, we're going to jump into it here. Now, we left Horst, our vampire protagonist, in this book at least, in a very precarious situation. They've stumbled upon some lesbian entomopter pilot circus, and they are performing for a local town when everything goes terribly wrong. Horst wakes up in the middle of the day, a weird cloud flies over the scape, and they pretty much have discovered that there is a horde of zombies, like a legitimate horde of zombies marching toward the town, and they are starting the evacuation process. Horst runs out to try and help after he wakes up mysteriously from having a very odd dream about Johannes's misfortune in the Dreamlands, and attempts to help corral the situation when all of a sudden the weird cloud just starts dropping odd modern art pieces, very large modern art pieces of some sort, and also large insects, statuary, mobile homes, giant tire creatures. Subversive art pieces are falling from the sky. So that's something that's happening. And Horst is in a bit of a delicate situation as he has run out of substance. So he's run out of blood and is having a lot of difficulty functioning at this point. And we left him in a very precarious situation. So we're going to jump right into it. If everyone's ready, if you have your beverage of choice, your animal friend, your comfy sweater, pillow, squishmallow. So everybody gather all that up, pile it on top of you. Make sure you're as calm as possible. Light some incense. Got it. 2. You have been on my line before. I recognize your username. I haven't seen you in a hot minute. You know he doesn't die. You're just, yeah. Well, considering that this is also a frame story, and we're in the benefit of he's narrating this to Johannes, we know, but still, it's fun getting there, right? Okay. Chapter 12, in which sacrifices are made. Horst imagined himself as a stilt walker, striding along on lengths of insensate wood, except in his case they were lengths of insensate flesh and blood that in happier times he would refer to as his legs. These were not happy times, however, and his legs, in addition to insensate, were not rigid. His first attempt to stilt walk upon his own legs ended in failure, as did the second and third. He only kept doing it because it was no slower than crawling, and also because it raised him high so that perhaps Becky on the footplate might see him and stop the train. And then the train did stop reversing out of the spur, but only for a moment, while the gears were thrown into forward drive and the train moved ponderously away from him. Behind, he could hear thuds, highly pitched screams emitted by no creatures that had ever walked the earth before, and other noises that defied description exactly because their like had never been heard on earth before. Also, they seemed to be growing closer. Horst was forced to the conclusion that the jig was very likely up with him. Besides, even if the creatures didn't finish him, the cloud was still steadily thinning. He had only vague memories of how the sun had felt last time it sent him to leaves and ashes, but those memories were not joyful. He hated to die again, with things so unfinished like this. Beneath him, the ground purred with impacts, and he rolled onto his back to see what was coming. His old friend, the giant carnivorous woodlouse, or another very like it, was heading directly for him. He doubted he could depend on the statue creature intervening again, so resorted to feebly waving his hands at it and saying, "Shoo!" in an aged whisper. This only seemed to incense the creature. It reared high, spreading the edges of the ridges behind its head in the way a hooded cobra might, if it had lots of legs, and was very ugly indeed. Horst wished he had a spear, or a sword, or a pointed stick, anything that might upset it as it stood before him, convinced of its victory and with its underbelly exposed. Admittedly, he wouldn't go so far as to call it a soft underbelly. Coated as it was with chitinous plating, it was still an underbelly, however, and he wished he had something with which to aggressively poke it there. Even if he couldn't kill it, he could perhaps bruise it a little, causing it some discomfort later. He appreciated that his situation was so hopeless that causing the thing that killed him mild discomfort some time after it had eaten him would be the closest thing to a Pyrrhic victory he could arrange. This was the limit of his dismay, beyond the wish he could have seen things through and perhaps died a little less pathetically. He could barely think any more. He stopped waving his hands at the monster and just wafted one dismissively at it as he lapsed back. He stared up at the arcane cloud that had brought his doom and all his little pal dooms. Whatever, he said, fully knowledgeable that they were poor last words. Last words weren't on his short list of final regrets, however, so he let them slide. The woodlouse thing seemed upset by such inattention, however, and made a dreadful noise. It was a complicatedly dreadful noise, and Horst was unable to make out the nuances due to the mechanical chattering coming from the other direction. The chattering seemed vaguely familiar, and probably something to do with the stream of bullets creasing the air above him. Yes, Thompson's submachine gun, 45 ACP. Now he remembered. The creature was making so much fuss because, it transpired, its underbelly actually was quite soft when gunfire was hosed across it. It crashed back down to bring its heavier outer armor into play, and then, either from surprise or prudence, rolled up once more into its great tire-like form. "On your feet, Cabal!" he heard somebody. Major Haskins. Yes. Shouting. "I can't manage that," he replied, slightly peevishly, as if he'd been asked to do handsprings. "I'm weak, run out of oomph." This latter thing, he said, because his sense of propriety cavilled at being talking about blood in polite company. "Oomph!" The major was closer now. Take the gun, he said to somebody else. Then Horst felt his collar gripped, and he was suddenly being dragged up the small slope to the edge of the showground. "This is very kind of you," said Horst, as he was being unceremoniously rolled into the fence before being dragged again. "Never leave a man behind," said the major. "Not if you can help it." "How does this thing work?" That was Professor Stone. "It doesn't," managed the major between heavy breaths. Horst sans oomph was turning out to be an awkward load. "Out of ammo. Damn it, help me, man!" Professor Stone contributed his spare hand, and Horst found himself sliding backward across the green swath a little more rapidly. He was glad he'd already decided his current clothing was going for rags the first chance he had to change, as he shuddered to think how deeply the grass stains would run. It was the latest in a day of horrors. "When you say oomph," huffed the major through his exertions, "do you mean to say—" "Blood," said the professor, also starting to breathe heavily. "He means blood." Horst only raised a hand and waved a finger in the professor's direction. "Yes, that." "Right," said the major, and dropped Horst. While the professor was still at the "what the blazes" stage, the major cut over him with, "We'll never make it to the rendezvous going like this. We're not even outrunning the zombies, never mind those other things. Professor, take the gun, run ahead. We'll catch you up." "What hope have—" began the professor, then paused as he understood the plan. "Major, that's not wise. He's starving. He may not be able to control his need for sustenance." Part of Horst's mind also understood now. Unfortunately, it was the part that rubbed its hands at the realization and said, "Good." "Hush, you," said Horst inwardly. "I told you to clear off. It was very dramatic. Don't go undermining me by coming back and spoiling everything." "We'll have to take that risk." "No," whispered Horst. "Leave me. Don't risk yourselves." But neither of them heard him. There was little time for prevarication. A crash made the professor and major look to the town in time to see a creature of the proportions of a harvestman spider. At this point, Johannes Cabal interrupted the narrative to explain that the harvestman, known in North America as the Daddy Longlegs, and obvious nonsense as Daddy Longlegs, is, of course, a colloquial name for the common crane fly, isn't a spider at all, but the order opiliones, which, while arachnid, are not actually closely related to spiders. He spoke on this theme for several minutes. It was fascinating. Expanded to a scale wherein its legs were as thick as any girder to be found in a Scottish shipyard, crash through the wall of the town's general store. Screaming locals were noticeable by their absence, and both men saw with relief that the impromptu evacuation had been as near total as they could have hoped for. "Very well," said the professor. "Good luck, both of you." As the professor ran from them, Major Haskins lifted Horst into a sitting position like a man with an impracticably large ventriloquist doll. "Right, you can have a pint, and that's your lot," he said. "I may not be able to control it," whispered Horst. The major looked him in the eye. "Well, you better bloody had, Cabal. That's the long and short of it. Besides, I think you're a better man than to let whatever little voice bids you do evil call the shots for you." "What?" said Horst's evil little voice within him. "How did he know?" "Shut up," Horst said to it with his big inner voice. "I've told you, clear off." "I'll be back," said the little voice, and it seemed to mean it. In any case, it grew quiet. "I'll control it," Horst said out loud. "I'm my own man. 1 pint, no more." "Righty-o," said the major without obvious enthusiasm. "Let's get this over with before we attract any attention." He jerked down the side of his collar to expose his jugular, his expression that of long-suffering impatience. Horst felt his fangs extend, but felt he couldn't just bite without some preamble. "This is terribly kind of you, Major," he began. "Do crack along," the major interrupted him. "I'm not inviting you to afternoon tea." "No," admitted Horst. "Quite," and drove in his fangs. "Oh," said the major tersely, but otherwise maintained a dignified silence while Horst fed. 1 pint only, Horst said to himself, although he wasn't quite sure how much that felt like. It had been a very long time since he had drunk a pint of beer, for example, or a pint of milk, and the experience of vampiric drinking was profoundly different anyway. Most people don't go around attaching themselves to kegs and udders by their canines, after all. Not most people. Instead, Horst relied on the quantities he had learned to take that did not unduly inconvenience the donor during his year with the carnival. That situation had been different, though. He had been at liberty to feed frequently and lightly on patrons who would be expecting to come away from a carnival with a love bite or two. In any case, they would regard it as a wasted evening. He had never starved before, but for the time he had endured several years in a crypt. Most of that time had been spent in a fog of inactivity when, day or night, he did not move for weeks on end and had never had reason to exert himself. This whole fighting zombies, werewolves, and otherworldly creatures business was the most wearing thing he had done in his life and unlife, and so he had never before burnt his resources down to nothing. That must be a pint," he heard someone say nearby, but he decided to ignore them, whoever they were, or at least part of him decided to ignore it, and the rest went along with it for a moment because the sensation of returning strength was so pleasurable, and anything was better than being a weak, doddering mess. But with strength there also returned clarity, and this detected in the part of him that said that nobody had spoken a certain smugness that he had taken it at its word. That was enough to break the spell. Horst lifted his head and wiped the blood from his lips. "Yes, Major Haskins," he said. "I'm sure it must be. Thank you." Horst stood easily, his weakness fading from his memory almost as quickly as his body. The Major followed him while tentatively touching his wounded neck. "Should I get some iodine on these?" "You can if you like, but from what I understand, a vampire's bite is very clean. My brother theorized that it was because all the bacteria you normally get in a human mouth can't survive, so a vampire's mouth is sterile. Other plus points are fresh breath and no plaque." He pointed towards the line where he hoped the train had stopped, just out of view beyond a small wood. "We should get along, Major. They won't wait forever." He turned back just in time to see the Major hit by the giant woodlouse thing. It smashed into him like a charging bull, jaws scissoring as it caught his arms and took it off in the middle of the biceps. Major Haskins cried out in startlement, more than pain, as he was borne down onto his back by the vast bulk of the creature. His cry was echoed distantly by Professor Stone, who was just climbing over the far fence when the disaster struck. Horst did not hesitate, but flung himself at the louse, grabbing it under the near edge of the carapace and attempting to flip it. The louse didn't really care to be lifted, and a host of hook-ended feet thrust into the earth meant that usually it got its wish. The hook system, while efficient and effective, however, had never evolved to deal with the efforts of an impassioned vampire. With a grassy tear of ripping sod, the louse found itself on its back. It made a baying, chittering shriek at such indignity, which, while painful to the ear, didn't help it back onto its feet in the slightest. Instead, it writhed on its back in the way known so well to its smaller, non-terrifying cousins. Horst went to help Haskins, but hesitated when he saw the extent of his wounds. Not only had one arm been taken, but the creature's slicing mouthparts had done their work on his chest, too. The ribs were laid open, the broken ends of bone visible, and something pulsed in the cavity beyond what Horst feared was the Major's exposed heart. Three. Bad. Cabal, the Major wheezed the words through the agony of his wrecked ribcage, must have made even breathing desperately painful. Cabal, take what you need. I'll get the professor, said Horst hopelessly. He looked over at Professor Stone. He had the submachine gun under the crook of his right arm and his left hand to his mouth in shock. It hardly surprised Horst. Even from over there, the extent of the Major's injuries must have been appallingly apparent. I'll get help. Major Haskins managed a very exasperated sigh despite everything. Don't be a damn fool, lad. I'm done for. My blood. He held up his hands and they were dripping red. Don't need it now. Be my guest. And he lolled back, his eyes dimming as he lapsed into shock. Horst had a feeling, a sense of some bit of mismanners etiquette that he'd heard somewhere, that it was rather discourteous to feed on people like that. On the other hand, he had been invited, and it would be rude to refuse, so he held Haskins close and reopened the so recently sealed wounds, all the while keeping an eye on the giant louse. He was therefore looking in the right direction when a stream of gray-white fluid sprayed onto it from somewhere on high. The fluid behaved oddly, however. It had seemed liquid enough on impact, but now it flowed quickly, and not entirely in the direction usually suggested by gravity. Instead, it ran between body segments and around legs, losing its wet gleam within moments to turn a dull matte. The louse certainly didn't like it. It squealed and flexed, scraping its legs in an effort to cast the stuff off, but only succeeding in gluing its legs together. Then, like a marionette whisked from the stage, it was gone, pulled into the air on the now very solid stream, up into the waiting jaws of the great harvestman. It seemed the harvestman had more tricks up its many sleeves than merely being very big. Horst stopped drinking and looked up, awestruck, as it looked down upon him, probably less awestruck. It watched him with the high disinterest of a hanging judge as it slowly crunched on the louse, bits of twitching chitin raining from its jaws, themselves devices of great complexity that dismantled as they manipulated, as they chewed. The louse lasted no time at all, and the harvestman's hunger was not assuaged. Before Horst could react, another jet of the gray web was arcing down from some gland mounted over the giant's jaws. Horst threw himself back, but he was not the target. The Major was gone in a thrice, although a splash of the liquid settled upon Horst's ankles and might have drawn him up too, but for the thinness of the strand connecting it to the main mass. Even so, his feet were off the floor before it snapped, dumping him on his back as the Major, mercifully beyond sensation, met a swift end in the slashing mandibles of the harvestman. Horst stared, horrified. The small voice that he usually ignored, however, was pointing out with increasing vigor that there was a lot less meat in a human than a giant woodlouse, and the harvestman had disposed of the latter in less than 15 seconds. It would therefore take proportionally less time to deal with the Major, at which point it would look for the next snack it could snag and masticate. And as Horst was lying sprawled right in front of it, this would not be a long search. Perhaps Horst might want to consider making life a little more problematical for the giant harvestman, rather than just lying there like finger food. Horst blurred into motion and unblurred 10 feet away in a spectacular forward roll that took him another 15 feet. The resulting grass stains were shocking. The problem was his ankles were no quite as independent of one another as he and they were used to. The webbing, more like a great mass of pale gray rubber, had dried rapidly and was hobbling him as effectively as any pair of manacles. He tried tearing the stuff away, but it was flexible enough to require time he did not have to remove it, and worse still, the surface ruptured to reveal a still wet web that his hand almost stuck to. Having two limbs glued was proving nuisance enough. If he ended up with a hand and both feet all joined together, it didn't entirely preclude the possibility of escape, but it certainly damned any hope of doing it with panache. Instead, therefore, he tried hopping. This he could do neither efficiently nor stylishly. Instead, it only reminded him of the sack races he had competed in and usually won at primary school. It also had the effect of exciting the attention of the harvestman, which had started to make the odd, head-bobbling movements that one associates with every predator, from raptors through cats and so to mantises. These are movements that never presage well for the object of their attention, and Horst decided that a sack race without a sack was not the tactic that would save him. He tried bounding instead, hands together, running as a dog might. A very slow dog. "Run, you fool!" he managed to shout at the professor. It was bad enough that he was going to die not only haplessly, but without dignity, and he surely didn't need an audience for it. The professor stirred into action, turned and ran. That, at least, was something, Horst thought. The highlight of Miss Virginia Montgomery's flying circus display was to have been a lot of quite cheap fireworks made more spectacular by being dumped from altitude from the underside of Miss Virginia's own trusty copperhead. For the usual collections of yokels they performed for, this was something new and astonishing. It was certainly new and astonishing to the harvestman when a buzzy, flying thing suddenly appeared before it, and while the monster's quite simple brain was deciding whether to catch and eat it rather than the funny hopping thing with no panache, dumped a load of flashy, burning, popping, explodey things in its face. The harvestman had never been so insulted, or surprised, or terrified. It backed away rapidly, backpedaling across the showground and so into the ruin of the general store, where it crouched within the remaining walls, making a touchingly futile attempt to hide. The Spirit of 76, meanwhile, performed a hard bank and deaccelerated hard to come to a hover directly before Horst. The rear pilot canopy slid back, and Miss Virginia leaned over the side. "Come on, for Christ's sake," she shouted at him over the deep roar of the engine. "That was all the fireworks I had." Horst hobbled to his feet and hopped to the side of the forward co-pilot and weaponeer's seat as the Entomopter set down so gently that the landing gear barely depressed. There it stayed, ready to fly at a touch of the controls and as eager to be off as a dog in the traces. The forward part of the canopy was designed to slide forward, but he only managed to get it to slide forward 6 inches before it jammed. He looked back to tell Miss Virginia as much when he saw the great angular frame of the harvestman starting to rise up again, eyeing them through its several eyes with rapacious interest. His expression told her all she needed to know. She shouted, "Hang on!" and he got halfway through saying, "Why?" and then suddenly they were airborne. Fortunately, Horst had been holding on before he had been asked to, and his enhanced strength combined with a healthy fear of hitting the ground from a height combined to anchor his hands to the inside edge of the forward cockpit with a tenacity that a crowbar would have found difficult to trouble. The Entomopter jigged sideways, nearly dodging a jet of web that would have caused havoc if it had gotten onto the wings. Miss Virginia put the nose down and shoved the throttle through the gate all the way to the maximum buster setting. The engine howled with power, and the wings momentarily started to accelerate harshly, but she changed their collective settings so they were biting harder, putting their newfound energy into shifting more air rather than just fluttering faster. The Copperhead tore along the edge of the showground, picking up speed rather than altitude. Horst saw little of this, concentrating solely on making himself a fixture of the Entomopter's side. As he clung there, however, an unpleasant thought occurred to him. Even without the thinning of the supernatural cloud, the aircraft's speed would soon take them out of the curious shielding effect it offered him as a vampire. As soon as they broke out from it altogether, he would become comatose after a few minutes and fall, assuming he wasn't burning before then. He would hate for that to happen. It would make a dreadful mess of the Entomopter's beautiful paintwork. Miss Virginia didn't want that either, or perhaps she valued his continued existence. Whatever the reason, she hardened the maneuver to present the side of the fuselage as horizontal as she could manage. It was enough, and he released one hand and used it to shove the canopy all the way open and threw himself into the cockpit. He pulled the forward canopy shut as he closed the rear, cutting the engine sound to a level where they could manage a conversation in merely raised tones rather than bellowing. "There's a blanket in there," she told him. "Use it to cover yourself. We'll be out from under the cloud in a minute." Gratefully, he looked around the cockpit floor and found a thick, folded Indian blanket stowed beneath the seat. It certainly looked opaque enough to do the job, and he started to unfurl it as Miss Virginia stayed under cloud cover as long as she dared, with an increasingly baity, colossal harvestman-like monster trying to shoot her down. He glanced sideways from the cockpit and froze. "There's a man down there," he said. "It'll be a dead 'un," she replied. "Nothing living. Well, nothing human and living." That's not what it looked like at all to Horst. He looked hard, enhancing his sight to the point where a kestrel would have requested binoculars. It was a man, and a living man, he was sure. He was dressed properly, not decked out in rags or shroud, although properly was a very relative term. Horst found little to approve of in the man's choice of wardrobe. He was also walking rather than shambling or staggering around. The zombies ignored him, he noted. Even when one of the strange statue creatures leapt out from the wheat at him, it fell short in a frantic windmilling of limbs, as if it had changed its mind at the point of jumping. It shied away from the man, as if frightened by him, or at least cowed by his presence. It stepped back from him a little way and then jumped on a zombie instead. "I know him," said Horst slowly. "I've seen him. Where have I seen him? In pictures? Somewhere. Where have I... Oh. Oh, dear God." "What is it?" "It can't be. It just can't be." He looked as hard as his inhumanly sharp senses would allow. "You," he said beneath his breath. "It's you." "But you're dead." A short interlude. Johannes Cabal had been leaning back on a small hill of plumped-up pillows, his eyes closed throughout the recitation. "What?" Now they opened, and he looked testily at his brother. "What?" He sat upright, any lingering weakness lost in a sense of effrontery. "You mock me," he said. "I swear, Johannes, those are my exact words. I would have laughed when you said much the same." "Exactly the same thing." "Much the same thing when you saw me. I didn't laugh, though. I didn't think you would appreciate it." In this, Horst was correct. Johannes Cabal settled back again, but hardly in the best of moods. He really was feeling much more like his old self. Chapter 12, continued. In which a face is recognized. Horst knew the man. He had seen newspaper images, wanted posters of him. He had seen his corpse, for heaven's sake. Brought into town of an evening when, bizarrely, his brother was proclaimed a hero for killing that very man. The man looked up, shading his eyes, watching the spirit of 76 as it circled him. Then he waved. Horst had to fight the impulse to wave back. "It can't be," he shouted back to Miss Virginia. "It simply can't be." "You know that fella?" she demanded. It was impossible to tell if her tone was curious or suspicious. Horst thought she had reasonable grounds for both. "Yes, but it's impossible. That's Rufus Maleficaris." A slightly longer interlude. Johannes Cabal was sitting bolt upright once more. "What?" he snapped. "What?" "Well, quite," said Horst mildly. "I was surprised too. I thought you'd killed him. You did say you'd killed him, didn't you?" "Of course I said it. I did kill him. I shot him. I shot him repeatedly with a Webley 577. I shot him repeatedly with a Webley 577 until he was quite dead. Horst regarded him a little too sincerely to be entirely sincere. You seem very emphatic about that. Because I killed him very emphatically. It is impossible. He cannot be alive. His body was recovered. The townspeople gifted him by all that is holy and much that isn't. He cannot be alive. Are you absolutely sure? Horst considered. Well, I'm fairly sure. I saw his picture, and I saw his body. This man on the showground. Describe him. Not much to say, really. He just looked a lot like Rufus Maleficaris. Big man, mad hair. Cabal sighed, just for once, more from relief than exasperation. That could be anyone. Horst nodded, conceding the point. You could be right. Oh. He raised a finger to indicate a remembered detail. He was wearing +4s. The effect upon his brother was terrible. He blanched a horrible gray, reminiscent of unsatisfying pancake batter. Ach, du lieber Gott, he managed in an awful whisper. It is him. Y'all are gonna kill me. Chapter 12 continued further, in which a strategy is advanced. Rufus who? Said Miss Virginia. Maleficaris, he was, well, it is, seems, a wizard. His father was a stage magician, I think, rabbits out of hats and so on, but then he started dabbling with the real thing, and fille followed père. How's it possible to be him if you're so damn sure that it is him? Because he's dead. My brother shot him to death, and believe me, when my brother puts his mind to something, he follows through. Maleficaris was threatening a town, and my brother stopped him. Yeah, your brother sounds okay. Horst decided not to expand on his brother's motives for protecting the town, which were less altruistic than they might seem. It had been less a heroic intervention and more the fighting of predators over a tasty scrap. Instead, he said, he has his moments. Without actually saying that this had been one of them, for that would have been a lie, still, Johannes did have his moments. If the Ministerium has somehow resurrected Rufus, then their power is enormous. This is too much for a handful of D Society agents to deal with. I thought they were getting the government involved. They're trying, but it will be too late. They need something very dangerous on their side to even their odds, and they need it now. More dangerous than a vampire? Even over the engine noise, the amusement in her tone was obvious. Oh, but I'm lovely, and I'm really not much into the whole Prince of Darkness business. No, they need somebody much more dangerous than me, he swallowed. He could hardly believe he was going to suggest this. We need my brother, Johannes. A quite long sort of interlude. Seriously, said Johannes. Being irked was doing wonders for returning some small hints of color to his face. You seriously posited me as some sort of weapon too dreadful to use? I don't know whether to be flattered or not. A resolution is coming to me. No, I'm not flattered. Don't give me that, scoffed Horst. You've been needling ever since I told you about the Ministerium needing a pet necromancer, and they didn't come to you. I would have told them their project did not interest me. Liar. A whole country where you could operate legally and in the open, you would have jumped at it. All you have to do is rustle up an army of zombies, and I abominate zombies. Every one of them is by definition a failure. I haven't risen one deliberately since my first experiments. I like the use of deliberately there. There are a necromantic dead end, and I don't dare think that pun was deliberate. The principles involved are simple and well understood. I could grind out those things until the cows came home and were likely eaten alive by the zombies. If that is this Misericorde's limit, she is no necromancer, merely a dabbler. Horst nodded in mock sympathy. Gelling when some piker comes along and gets the job you should have had, isn't it? Cabal looked at Horst angrily. Mayhap being dead repeatedly has affected your hearing. I would not have accepted the role if all it entailed on my part was something as facile as getting a cemetery or two on the move. Liar, liar, liar. Ends and means, Johannes. You'd have swallowed your pride for the time it took to put together an army of the dead for them, if it meant a free hand and unlimited resources for research afterwards. There was a tense silence, but Cabal's anger was abating. He chewed it and swallowed it with difficulty, for they both knew Horst was right. And the monsters, asked Cabal at last. These pets of Maleficaris, what became of them? I understand they died? Just died, fell over, and passed away? As the cloud dissipated? Yes, said Horst. When the cloud faded away, the last to die was the big harvestman thing. Made an awful mess as it fell. Diaboom and Daisy Hulick circled the area to make sure everyone was out. Very public-spirited of them, said Cabal, his thoughts elsewhere. Daisy didn't come back. Cabal looked over at his brother to find Horst looking intently at him. Somewhat disquieted by this, he asked, What happened? Boom lost sight of her. Some of the smaller monsters were still falling from the cloud, smaller than the harvestmen, still massive. Then she saw fire on the ground. He took a deep breath before he continued. It was the Queen of the Desert. There was a lot of debris with one of those woodlouse things in the middle of it. Already dead, by the look of it. Boom reckons it must have hit Daisy while she was looking for stragglers. Cabal tightened his jaw. She should have stayed on the cloud's shadow. That's where stragglers were in danger, Johannes. It's where Miss Virginia flew to save me. Daisy Hewlett died trying to help people. Horst was looking intently at his brother. Can you say it was a foolish death? Cabal said nothing. Then abruptly, So, what do you want from me, assuming that your tale is done? Horst nodded. Once his brother would have called Daisy stupid and discounted her life and death as a trifle. He decided not to draw attention to this observation. Pretty much done, yes. We joined up with a train, although I don't remember much about it. As soon as Ginny Montgomery was out from underneath the cloud, I passed out. Thank God for the blanket. Still, that night we made plans, sorted out a schedule, decided on rendezvous points, and so on. It was all very military, he sighed. Haskins would have approved. As for what we want from you, your experience and knowledge. Well, it's lovely to be wanted, said Cabal. The type of wanted that doesn't involve bounties, dead or alive. I should warn you, my last advisory role did not go very well. I know. I was the one who found you dying, remember? Occupational hazard, though, surely. Cabal nodded, then fell into deep thought for a minute or two until his brother, slightly impatiently, said, "Well?" Cabal looked at him, mildly curious. "Well, what, pray?" "Will you help us?" Cabal frowned at such a stupid question. "Of course I'll help you." "There's no of course about it, Johannes, just because a great occult evil is rising on the continent, and just because the lives of millions are threatened with a dictatorship of the dead, just because your brother asks you nicely, none of these are enough for an of course from you. I know you too well. So, why?" "You need to ask?" Horst nodded. "I do. First and foremost, Rufus Maleficaris. I don't think you realize what a great threat he is. You told me he was an idiot in big trousers. He is a powerful idiot in big trousers, although the trousers represent only a small part of the threat. This is a man who used the Ereshkigal working and an ill-considered revenge plot." "The what?" Cabal grunted with irritation. "Your ignorance appalls me." "Almost everything about me has appalled you at some time or another." "True. In fairness, there's no good reason why you should know of the working. Briefly, it is a ritual that allows an animatory power into our world. Its subjects of choice are freshly dead humans. They rise and kill more, which rise, and so on and so forth." "Is that what Lady Misericord used?" "Emphatically not. The Ereshkigal working is a trap. The ritualist who summons this power has control over it. But that control fails permanently when they fail to exert it, by falling asleep, for example. The animating power then does whatever it likes, such as killing the ritualist and then carrying on as it sees fit." "More killing and raising undead?" "Exactly so. The Ereshkigal working is a cancer in which the corrupted cells are waking dead. Left to its own devices, it will continue to spread indefinitely. It has been used twice in antiquity and was fought to a halt on both occasions, although at great cost. It has been used once in modernity by a loud idiot in big trousers who couldn't be bothered reading the relevant text to see how badly things worked out the last time it was used." "How did it fail this last time?" "Oh," Cabal sniffed dismissively. "I was there, I dealt with it." "You were there?" Horst looked at him askance. "That was quite a coincidence." "No coincidence at all. I was the subject of the half-baked revenge attempt whereby Maleficaris performed the ritual. Murder by apocalypse." Cabal stretched and rested his hands behind his head. "Oh, Horst. He is such a Shukov you would not believe. You haven't mentioned exactly why he wanted revenge on you in the first place." "Professional jealousy?" "Oh, he got the idea I'd killed his father from somewhere." "And, had you?" "No. I destroyed his father, but he was already dead at the time." Horst raised his eyebrows, which he felt showed impressive self-control under the circumstances. "You destroyed his father's corpse?" "Yes," said Cabal emphatically. "The idiot had already killed himself, so there was no point in his son becoming so very upset over it." Horst shook his head. "I feel I'm missing some important factors here. If Maleficaris Sr. was already dead, why did you destroy his body?" "Because he was trying to kill me at the time," said Cabal, surprised at having to explain such an obvious thing. "His son was trying to kill you, so you destroyed the father's body?" Cabal looked at him as if realizing his brother was actually a complete nincompoop. "No," he said. "This was long before I even knew there was a son. The father tried to kill me." "Before he killed himself?" "After he killed himself. Really, Horst, this isn't complicated." Horst grimaced. I would accuse you of having an unnecessarily convoluted lifestyle, but then I remember that I'm a vampire on the run from a huge supernatural conspiracy. Very well, so this all boils down to Rufus Maleficaris would be dangerous enough with a box of matches, never mind the keys to life and death. Is that it? You have it. Conspiracy or not, Maleficaris is too dangerous to have running around, summoning monsters and wearing bad tweed. For that alone, I would join you. For that alone? Horst looked seriously at Cabal. You have other motivations. They are a legion. They somehow raised Maleficaris as a functional human being. Well, at least as functional as he was before I shot him. That is very interesting, and I intend to discover how they did it. They raised me too, somehow, said Horst. Cabal looked at him and frowned. Yes, about that. I honestly had no idea that it was a possibility, Horst. You know that, don't you? I would have tried, if I had but known. I didn't die in an accident. Not the second time. Horst's tone was cold. I wouldn't have thanked you. No, I admitted Cabal. No, I doubt you would have. He coughed, embarrassed. Although that is another major reason that I am offering my help. If the D Society had asked me, I would probably have agreed, despite my recent experiences of working with secret organizations, but I would have considered it at great length, and in reality I have, and would likely have asked for much more in return. I am familiar with the D Society, Horst. Their archives are a tar pit for certain books and artifacts. Once the D people have their hands on something, it might as well have been destroyed for all the good it will do for certain enterprising individuals. He saw how his brother was looking at him. Yes, like myself. You'd have made them pay for your help in possibly saving the Earth? Don't overstate affairs. The Ereshkigal working, Johannes. Rufus Maleficaris still knows it, even if he may have learned not to use it. Cabal nodded. That is fair, but I would still have sought some advantage. Horst suddenly sat upright. My God, Johannes, are you saying that you're accepting this task because I asked you? Cabal did not reply. Instead, he found a loose thread on his eiderdown and fiddled distractedly with it. Horst sat on the side of the bed and braced his brother around his shoulders with one arm and rubbed the top of his head with his knuckles of the other. Horst! Snapped Cabal. I am no longer 8 years old. Horst kissed him on the top of his head. You'll always be my little brother, Johannes, even if you do look older than me now. Ah, yes, only you could find the redeeming virtue of vampirism to be savings of male toiletries. Horst rose and looked at Cabal expectantly. You're with us, then? I'm with you. The rest of the miscreants and ne'er-do-wells you have in your train are pure corollary. Good enough, Horst grinned. Well, look at us. The necromancer and the vampire against the forces of elemental evil. The Brothers Cabal ride again. Yee-haw, said Cabal evenly. That's the end of chapter 12. For real this time. For real. Oh, shit. I hit the incense burner. Okay. That's all it was. That is the end of chapter 12. For real, for real. No more to be continued. Another shorter, longer interlude of some expectancy. The end of chapter 12, I promise. I wanted to get all of chapter 12 together because I didn't want to come back and be like, chapter 12 continued. And you were like, we just read chapter 12. And I wanted you to get the full picture of what was happening before we lead into... Yeah, there's like 3 chapter 12 continues. Like chapter 12 continued. An interlude, a shorter interlude, a longer interlude. 12.8. No, I'm not. It's chapter 13. I promise. You can check the table of contents in your own copy. I'm going to hide this logo. Not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored. So yeah, you counted. I kept looking up and seeing a count of like, this is the third one. And I was like, oh fuck. Maybe this was a bad idea. Yeah. I just love the moment he's just like, oh my god, you're just doing it because I asked you. And Johannes is like, god fucking damn it. I hate everything about what I'm doing right now. Aw, thank you for the corgi. Also say hi to Toby. Thank you. I don't take it lightly that you've entrusted me. I swear to God it's chapter 13. I swear to fuck. It's in which the Brothers Cabal ride again. Chapter 13. Anyway, one of the audios I wanted to use was the Arrested Development audio where it's like, I'm in love with your brother-in-law. You're in love with your own brother? Like that one, but the back and forth of like, you killed his father? So you destroyed his corpse. No, yes, I destroyed his corpse. Really, horse, this isn't complicated. It's like, so the son tried to kill you? No, the father tried to kill you. Before he killed himself. No, after he killed himself. I just want that back and forth as an audio of some kind. And if you're curious about any of those things, might I direct you to the YouTube. The Ereshkigal Working and Exit Demon King should both be on the YouTube. They are short stories included in this narrative. Hence why we read them beforehand. So now you have context for the Ereshkigal Working, which, as you know, ended terribly with Rufus Maleficaris tied to a host of parade balloons and shipped down the canal, and Cabal narrowly escaping the police, and Exant Demon King, he was researching a spiritual phenomenon in a theater, when he realized that the star trap for the theater had basically a wormhole, literally. It's a hole with a demon worm in it that ate souls on occasion to basically prolong Rufus Maleficaris' soul life. And he did try and kill Johannes by putting him through the wormhole. We have read all the short stories. We have covered all the short stories. So you have context for every minor event that they have context for. You have already read. So, and if you would like to re-listen to them, they are all on the YouTube. You should be able to find them all there. So, fun times if you ever want more context. But that is where the Ereshkigal Working and the Exant Demon King actually really come in the series. And, of course, Rufus comes up multiple times. Keeps showing up. Just keeps coming back. So that was fun. How are we all enjoying it? Did we enjoy that? Did we like the context? Do we all feel certain we know what's happening right now? Any theories as to who the Red Queen is? That was fun. Awesome. Good, good, good. So glad you all are enjoying it. I know I'm having fun. Because it stands to reason that now the Red Queen has manifested 2 people among her numbers that know Johannes. But they're best friends. So what would she stand to gain from antagonizing Johannes in such a way? Good theory. No, it's good that you wanted to be Leonie. Oh, for the chaos. Everyone comes back in the next book. Everyone. You want Zarenya back? She's back. You want Leonie back? She's back. Elizabeth is back. The witch from the Dreamlands? She's back. Horst is there. Rufus Maleficaris is there. The Red Queen is there. Everybody is there that you could think of to be there is there. So yeah, theories abound. Going out with a party, and you don't know how accurately that is. This next book reads more like a D&D campaign possibility. I'm not kidding. It's very much like a split the party sort of situation, but you were all setting up on a journey together. That's what this next book is. It legit kind of reads like you enter a dungeon and you it's a party and everyone was invited. Absolutely. Accurate. Sure. Yes, that tracks. Accurate. Okay. What's your theory? Go ahead. I'm not going to tell you if you're right, by the way. I just enjoy seeing you guys speculate, which is fun. Oh, good theory. Good theory. I'm not telling you. But, ooh, good theory. Is it death? From the short story? From the Fae short story? Or are you meaning the actual embodiment of death? Because that was a Fae disguised as death. So if you mean her... Lady Ninika. Okay. Spelled with one N and a U, strangely. So it's Ninuka, unless I'm much mistaken. Both great theories. Yeah, I didn't know if you actually meant death is coming for him, or if you meant the Fae disguised as death. That was like, your lifeline, Johannes. You can't be running around with no lifeline. One of my favorite short stories, by the way. I love that one, just because the weird, convoluted paranoia trip that they just send him on for no reason. They just got mad one day. We're like, Man, he keeps keeping all these fae in his garden and not feeding them, and we're all pissed about it. Frank Barrow. Alright, like he is purporting that he is female to be able to disguise his identity behind this front. Yeah, because Jen brought that up earlier, and that's a great theory. And he hasn't checked on her in a while to make sure she's still down there. So, who's to say? And the Dreamlands did end with Nyarlathotep say, "How about your heart's desire?" And then send him on a weird goose brain trip for a little bit. Like a weird goose chase / pseudo brain trip for a while, and he woke up and he thought it was a cruel joke. What if there was more to the joke? Because it was heavily implied that there was more to the joke than Johannes understood, because he's human, and Nyarlathotep has a very odd sense of humor. It's a cat. It's always cats. Great theory, Dad. You're the one who's read the book before, and you're like, it's cats. Good header, Dad. Good header. Yeah, it never says directly if they were married or not, or if they were, like, courting, and then she came to an untimely death. So bad. I can't spoil it. Alright. We should always have a plan for cats. Yeah, like, as we've been shown. We definitely need a plan for cats, or else, who be knowing what go on. Alright. Now's the time. Who wants to continue? BRB. Okay, we'll wait for you. I was about to say, make sure you go to the bathroom, get yourself another drink, make sure your cats have been fed, put your kids to bed, all that jazz. Get that together. Well, no, we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait. Who's missing? Because someone said they had to be right back. We're gonna wait like polite people. It's only a few minutes. Gray is here. Oh, you're back. I gotta update the YouTube, by the way. I know I haven't uploaded last week's. I did get a little sick. Partially why I'm not in cosplay today. And so I will get that updated. I kind of got a little bummed because I have to do stuff for work and I don't want to do it. And I've been procrastinating, and then I got sick. And then I felt kind of like crap for a couple days. I spent way too much time in VC. So everybody who's been listening to me rant about Final Fantasy and VC for like 2 nights in a row, I apologize. Sure, everyone finds that absolutely fascinating. There's no way you couldn't. I mean, definitely. I know that game only came out, over 10 years ago, and no one's played it. So, of course you want spoilers. Yes, I did get the gambit worked out. Well, pseudo got the gambit worked out because I still don't have, a contingency for stop yet, other than just using all of my Chronos' tears every single time I do anything in the mines. I keep getting silence and blind put on me. So nutso. Anyway, Final Fantasy 12. I've been playing Final Fantasy 12. Yes, I would love to play the game tonight after the live. It's been super fun. I grind preemptively in Final Fantasy, and any RPG with a very vast layout, I always grind for an inordinate amount of time so that I can breeze through the rest of the game. So I've played 40 hours and I've only unlocked one summon yet. And I'm like already in my mid-30s level wise, and I only got the first summon. So I'm like running around grinding to hell before I get into any new area, because I just like to be prepared. I don't like going in half-cocked. I want to be able to go into the hunt, complete it easily. Go to a boss, it's a breeze every single time. I like doing that. So I've been spending an inordinate amount of time unlocking every weapon and every magic spell that immediately comes out and grinding to hell until I get 10 levels above where I need to be. And then breeze through every boss in like less than 5 minutes. I gotta get back into Genshin, but I've been hesitant, so I don't know. Maybe I'll stick it together. Green dragon thingy in the woods. Is Denny back? Is Denny back, or is Denny still gone? No, not Denny. Emmy. Sorry. Jesus Christ. I was like, I looked at your comment right there, so I was like, Denny. It's not Denny, it's Emmy. Do you have enough license points for that? Yes! No, I do not. I do not have enough license points ever. Yeah, that's what, like, I was talking about Sumeru the other day because I know there's some, like, controversy over it, but I haven't gotten to play the game to know. So, I'm busy. I'm too busy playing a game that's been out for over 10 years to play this new game with loads of fascinating content. I just have to replay everything I love. All of my comfort game shows, books, no new content ever, please. No, I'm joking. I love new content. I just gotta be in the right space for it. Emmy's back. Yes, thank you. That would be great if I could get some context. Crimson, get at me. Okay. Alright, I've largely stayed out of that, by the way, so I don't know necessarily. Alright, we're good to go. Emmy's back. Everybody get your smoothies, your drinks. Oh shit, I keep hitting the incense burner. I gotta